Maybe. What is what's happening here?
Hi guys.
Right? Hey. And good morning, everybody, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world. This is your Wednesday wrap-up. I'm joined here with Mr. Yu and Herb. Grab some coffee. Let's buckle up. How you doing, gentlemen?
I've had better days.
Well, at least I get to see your shiny faces this morning because, it's a good way to start the middle of the week here.
Yes.
And, Yeah. So wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the extra point rule for the UFL. In a way, it's kind of cool. You have the option for a 1 point, 2 point, and a 3 point conversion, right? The 1 point is from the 2 yard line, 2 point from the 5, and a 3 point from the 10. I don't know if anybody's actually converted the 3 point yet, but kind of an interesting spin on it. They do get the kicking game out of the way there, though.
Kind of ran into that by accident. I think I was watching the Brahmas and Memphis Showboats, I think it was. And I was popping in and out, doing stuff around the house, and I popped in and out on the game. And the Brahmas were down by like 6 or 7 points, something like that. I went to the kitchen, do some stuff, came back. These boys were getting to score 2 points to win the whole game. I'm like, what happened? So I think that rule came into play. I think it was one of those 3 point deals because they had already scored a touchdown already, and somehow they got the ball back and tried to score. I think from the 10 yard line, like you said, for 3 points to win the game, and they actually did that and won. I'm like,
oh, okay.
Wow. So that was my first time seeing it, but it seemed like it's fun. I mean, I'm not sure it's helping attendance, but it seemed like it's.
I mean, they've actually had pretty good attendance so far, right? Yeah. But it's only been 2 weeks, so we'll see. But I mean, attendance for it has been pretty solid. I think it starts at a good time, right? We're at this spot where there's not a lot happening with the NFL, right? Free agents have pretty much signed, and you're not going to see a lot more free agents signed until after the draft, right? So we're kind of in this weird little lull to kick off the season. So it's probably actually some good timing as far as the league's concerned. But I don't know. I kind of like the spin on it. It especially because an extra point has, it's essentially an automatic, right? It's very rare to miss an extra point in the NFL. So kind of neat to see a different spin on it.
Right. There's a little more excitement at that time of the game when something that's, they tried their best, I guess, with the NFL. Let's just push it back, but it's still just a kick, versus let's actually see a play and some, strategy to the play. How far out do we think? Do we have a great play from the 5 yard line that we think, all right, we're always going for 2? Or like, I guess in Mr. Yu's case, we have some spectacular play from the 10 yard line that we're like, I feel really good about it, just so I like the element of both of those. And Bo and I think we got called out on a post, I guess, about the UFL's attendance, or I guess their ratings at one point. So I guess they're doing better than what we thought. Because the UFL's official poster came out and said, hey, this is how many viewers we've had for the first week. So I said, okay, well, maybe it is starting off all right.
Yeah, I mean, opening week was good for them. I don't know what kind of drop-off they had this last weekend, right? Because that's week 2. Opening weekend for everybody's good. I mean, when you look at the Oakland A's, their opening day game, they had 13,000 people. The next game, it was like 5. So people, not even 1,000, just 5 people, just staff is really what.
Yeah. Mom, dad, cousin.
I don't know why they jumped on you guys, man. I looked at a couple of games that I think it was in that first week. We talked about it on the show. It wasn't stellar. So I don't know why they jumping on you guys for. It wasn't like it was great. It was good, but
It was just a random post. We were talking about the league, and the guy jumped in. He wasn't rude about it. He was just like, "Hey, this is how many, this was our viewership for the first week, or every game had at least this many viewers." We were like,
so to be fair, if that's your job, it's week 1 of your new league being put together,
right?
Yeah, you're going to be a little salty coming out the gate, right? Because people are talking, and you hadn't even played a game yet. So. I kind of get that. I kind of get clapping back.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about it. I was just like, okay, buddy. I mean, this, like you said, it's what's your job. And then they've been posting a lot of content. They've been active on Twitter. So I get it. And
their first week, I think they totaled about 45,000 for all of the games. The one, I think with the what you call it, the Showboats, Memphis again, they only had about 8,700 people that came out. So the attendance came from the other teams like Arlington and Birmingham. So it's kind of tit for tat. But they're doing good. And we want football. So that's the whole point, right? Because we can't not have football. So so it works for me. I want football 24/7 if I can get it, but I'll take what I can get. So this is good though. This is just still a good thing for us.
So since you've watched some of the games, what do you think of the quality of the game? What's a good way to inconsistent? That's a good way to put it, right? Like you'll see moments where you're like, okay, that's not bad, or you'll see guys that were in the NFL that obviously look far more polished, right? Some of it you're watching and you're just like, man, it's a little bit ugly. Right? Like
that's exactly my feeling. That's exactly the sound that I make when I'm watching some of the games. Some of the guys that I see the name, I recognize them. I know where they played.
Sure.
Right.
And I see them in the NFL, and they do really good things. You like you said, they've been polished. You can see it. And you got the guys that I never heard of before that do some boneheads that are like, oh my God. And the coaches who are usually NFL coaches, they got smoke coming out of their ears. They're red faced. They're steaming mad. Like, what? It's like, so it is inconsistent. You never know what you're going to get. It's kind of up and down. But again, it's football. I'm kind of just like, I'm living with that stuff because we're living and dying with it, really, because I need to have football. And this is the only time we probably going to get some outside of the college football season in the NFL when it starts back up again. So take what we can get, right? It's all good, man. It's football. The fans should be excited about it. It's a family event. It's all good, man.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough to get real psyched about it because we had a team, right? And then, obviously in this realignment, all the West Coast teams go. Really the East Coast teams too, right?
Yeah, the Guardians are going.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know where they are. They're going forever.
It's but see, I don't know if it's gone forever though, because they're already talking about the expansion. So then
really,
yeah. So
knock it down and do it back up again.
I didn't mean to laugh as I said that, but but that's how it came out. But yeah, no, they're talking about the expansion, not next season, but the season after, I believe. So they're assuming that they're going to make it multiple years, right? Which you have to plan for that. But the real question is do you bring back the teams that you got rid of? Right now, some of them where they were sharing a stadium, maybe that's an issue. I don't know. But, do you bring back your Florida teams, your New York team, your Philly team, Seattle, Vegas? Like, are those the ones that you're trying to grow back into? Because you already have, you already have the logos set. You already have a fan base that already bought gear. Or are you going to do something kind of shady where you're like, okay, we're going to re-enter this market, but we're going to change everything. So all that gear you bought, none of that matters, right? Now you got a new team, all that. And of course, they're also, as it sits today, I believe all the teams are owned by the UFL, right? Mm-hmm. So in theory, they would be starting to sell those franchises, right? Which would be good for the sport.
So why is it the cynical side of me says new teams just so they can do new merchandise?
No, 100%.
They'll hope that the people who had the old merchandise will support the team again, but I don't know, if you lose your team for like 2 years and then all of a sudden it pops back up and it's not like your regular league, I just feel like you're going to be like, I don't know about this. It's going to be a little more lukewarm going into it the second time. So
definitely, especially because you'd probably have a couple of years before people started to buy off, right? Because now we've had these teams where they've come in and they fizzle after a year or two, right? Because the AAF did the same thing. They didn't even make it a full season. And so, at some point, fans are like, look, I want to support, but I want to know you're going to make it, past this weekend.
Right.
And it's one of the things I do worry about with the UFL is, obviously they have the advantage of the TV contracts are, built in because they're co-owned by Fox, right? So, obviously the TV deal is pretty easy, but shrinking it down to the regional sport definitely wasn't what I imagined when they were combining the two leagues.
Right.
Like I thought they were going to do a meaningful combination where, maybe you lose a couple of teams because there's some overlap, right? Houston had a team in both leagues, whatever, right? But for you to essentially go from an 8-team league, combining 2 8-team leagues and still have an 8-team league, you're like, what was the point of that?
Right. Right. And putting all your eggs basically like in the Texas basket, or most of them, that's like, you'll probably have great ratings for that kind of stuff. But when you start to branch out to the other little ones, we're just kind of like, I don't know. I didn't like it at the beginning, and we got a team. So, you'd think I'd be one of the happy people, but you can also tell logistically they didn't consider certain things either. So like I said, this weekend, having the Birmingham Open and not checking out what else is going on, like the Alabama A-Day game, it just seems like, you know what I mean? They're just, it seems like with all the money that they're putting into this and all the people around, that some better decisions could have been made from the get-go. So, and I'm not even on one of those coasts, and I think it's a dumb idea to not attack the coast. Like, I just don't get that.
Well, I mean, how do you alienate that many viewers? Right. I mean, when you're talking about Philly, New York, Florida, the Northwest, Vegas, like that's an insane amount of people.
Right.
That you're just writing off. And it's not like there wasn't a team there. So people are just like, oh, okay, it's regional, but that's how it started. We'll see how it progresses. It's like, oh, you have a team for a minute. Just kidding. No.
Yeah. But please still watch.
Yeah. Still watch. Watch. Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah. Sorry about those season tickets you pre-ordered.
Right. I mean, like an extreme example, like if Alabama all of a sudden, the school closed, there was no more football. Like, I'm not all of a sudden think, well, I'll just watch the rest of the SEC. It's fine. I'll just be like, for a minute, I'm like, okay, I don't care about football at all. I'm not watching this, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially what I did with basketball, right? With the NBA. They're like, oh yeah, we're just going to, send your team over to Oklahoma City. But you should still watch. It's like, no. I think I'm all right.
Yeah. Someone came in the middle of the night, stole your team, and said, "Hey, we're still cool, though, right?" No, we're not cool.
We sure aren't. We sure are cool. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is something that this spring football definitely adds an element for some of the cities that did have a team that went away. Like St. Louis getting a team is cool for that city because it's not like they weren't going to games. It's not like they didn't want to see their team, right? Their ownership was just like, yeah, we're headed to LA. Deuces, yo. Like, so, yeah, I mean, so it's cool. And honestly, they have one of the better, attendance records because it's a city that loved football and didn't want their team to leave. And, so I get them supporting another league. I think it would have been the way that they got rid of other teams. I almost expected them to lose that one just for good measure, right? Just to be like, you know what? Every area that really loves football, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and pull it out of there.
Did they mention the rationale for this? I mean, to tear it down and then try to build it back up again, just almost the same way. They mentioned what it was, cost cutting. I mean, because the expansion probably going to end up being like what most expansions are, maybe a couple of teams at a time. So it's like, how are you going to rebuild that fan base for those two teams, wherever they're going to be located? How you going to make that work when you basically smash them in the face? Now you want to try to tell them it's going to be okay. So how's that?
So some of it was stadium logistics. So it sounds like the Vegas team was going to have a little bit of an issue with, keeping the stadium that they were playing in. Obviously, a couple of these teams that went away were sharing a stadium. That was the UFL model, or USFL, is they had 8 teams, but they shared 4 stadiums, right? Yeah. So you knew a couple of those teams were probably going to go away. You knew one was going to go away in Houston because both leagues had a team there. So some of that, I would imagine that the West Coast ones were probably more of a travel issue.
That was my first thought, yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, it's not like they had California teams, right? Like the furthest, like Seattle was the furthest west, and then the next one was Vegas.
Right.
So that one, dropping Seattle from a travel standpoint made some sense. But losing the Florida teams, that didn't make any sense. You're already in DC, so getting rid of Philly and New York doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, I mean, if you were going to try and do it because of logistical issues, then, yeah, maybe Vegas and Seattle getting dropped, and then you lose, one of the Florida teams and a Houston team, dropping 4 teams, that would have made sense, right? But you still end up with a 12-team league at that point. So
Did we keep Birmingham because of their past success in the league then? Or is that like more of a logistics, I guess, from where we are? Or are they just hoping because we all got nothing but football down here that we're going to flock to them? So.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think it had some to do with their success. I think it had to do with it was their most favorable stadium contract, okay. I think that they had. So I'm pretty sure some of that played into it. But it couldn't just be based on success, because if you look at, the Seattle Sea Dragons, right? They were a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
And the attendance here was actually really good. So it can't just be based on team success, because they got rid of teams that were good.
Yeah.
So, but no, that was the long way to answer. No, they didn't actually officially say why they got rid of the teams they did. It really, a lot of their merging was kept real close to the vest, because I was talking with a couple of the people in the media department for the XFL about getting media credentials, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden the line of communication kind of died, right? But we didn't know at the time that the merger was a for sure thing.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, line of communication falls off, and I'm just like, oh, okay, that's weird. But if they're merging, there's going to be a lot of emails to respond to and all that. And then the announcement, oh, just kidding, Seattle loses their team. It's like, this makes more sense now. I wouldn't want to be like, oh yeah, just kidding. You're not going to need media credentials unless you're going to fly somewhere.
He said, I'm not that interested.
Yeah, I'm not flying to Texas, at random weekends. Honestly, that's probably why you guys were selected, even though it was the spring game, right? Is it might depend on what other stuff that stadium already had contracts for.
Sure.
Right? Because, I mean, you might have, Supercross or Monster Jam or, something coming through that's also using the stadium. So they may have had to kind of tweak their schedule to accommodate that.
I can see that. It's just weird to me, like when you mention some of those other major markets and then you say Birmingham, and it just doesn't seem to fit the model. Like, yeah, we're going to take it out all these major cities, but we'll give Birmingham a team too. So,
yeah, I mean, some of the cities they walked away from was bizarre.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. And if I was just outside ranking, I would think those other teams would be far ahead of Birmingham, And then, like, to my other point, I won't keep beating into the ground, but if you're going to give Birmingham one, then you have to consider what it's up against in Birmingham, to me, when you're scheduling their home games. So that's it.
Absolutely. Got people stopping in to say good morning.
Morning.
Chiming in. Chad, thanks for stopping in. All right. The Bengal. Yes. Be sure to hit that like button. Absolutely. All right. Okay. So the other, kind of news over this week was NFL Network following the ESPN model and firing on-air talent. And some of these are surprising, especially Siciliano. That one was a big surprise to me. And some of the people they kept instead of these guys, interesting idea. The only thing I will credit them with is, big shout out to ESPN, NFL Network, and all of these big TV networks that are starting to lose their on-air talent. They are just breathing life into our podcast world.
We appreciate you.
People are, they still want to watch. And if it's not going to be on your major networks, they're going to find it somewhere. And so good looking out for the small guy. Really appreciate that.
The name for me, like, honestly, because I don't watch as much NFL Network, I really do get more of my stuff from podcasts, but like Melissa Stark's a name that I feel like I've known for years.
Yeah, forever.
So that was kind of weird. I guess in her announcement, she was like, yeah, I'm going back to NBC with their sport, so it's not like she's hurting, but it is always interesting when these networks just decide to start trimming. Like, this is purely a money thing, or it doesn't ever seem to be an indictment on like the person itself. It's just like almost, hey, we just picked names out of a hat and you guys drew the short straw. Like, I don't, it doesn't ever seem to be a whole lot of rhyme or reason.
Yeah, especially when you're looking at, some of these guys are staples, right? They've been around a long time. They got a big following. I would imagine they're probably a little bit more expensive, I guess. But, TV networks are about ratings, right?
Right.
About eyeballs.
Right.
And not really any different than what it is we're doing here.
Right.
It all survives on, people actually watching, whether it's the watch hours, likes, subscribes, whatever. It all revolves on that. But there's no way you're telling me that Melissa Stark and Siciliano and Palmer and there's no way you're telling me these guys aren't drawing eyeballs to your network.
Right. And you're also at the same time saying, we're just going to replace you with the next guy. And we think that person, or guy or girl, and we think that person is just as good as you are. And we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Which is not always happening, and I think we all know people have just basically said, especially NFL Network or ESPN, like a couple of people have gone and they're like, all right, and I'm kind of done with the whole network, once you lose the guy that I'm actually tuning in to see.
No doubt. There was a lot of that for ESPN because they fired tons of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were looking at that like, well, that was the one show I watched. So, and now when you look back at some of these shows, they're wildly different.
Yeah.
Like Good Morning Football is a great one, right? I don't know that there's anybody that was originally on that cast at this point.
Yeah, the Will Silver name, that's the one that's kind of getting me because he's really good at what he does. No offense to anybody else in that list, but he's one of those guys that, he drops some really good, some real knowledge. I like him a lot.
Yep.
He's actually from LA and he moved to New York because the network wanted to move there. So now they want to move back to LA for, I assume, cost cutting measures, but they're not having any kind of financial issues though, from what I'm reading. And they kind of responding to a crisis that doesn't really even exist.
Right.
They moved Good Morning Football back to LA. So people are kind of up in arms about that in New York, especially that's where the market is. Total Access is not functioning on the level they used to be. They used to be like, kind of at the top of the food chain, NFL news wise. You could hardly see anything about them now. Good Morning Football may not come back until August. They're going to be on hiatus while they try to figure this whole move out. So it's a whole bunch of upheaval and there's no financial crisis at all to speak of.
Right.
These media change for change's sake, but as I dug deeper, it looks like they're trying to sell the network. So they're trimming the costs so that way, I guess it'd be more palatable for the new ownership to come in. So they're probably going to give you a lot of games from Europe, like we've seen a little bit last year, or Germany and what have you, London, and try to make it desirable for somebody to come in and buy the whole operation. So that's what it looks like. But at the expense of this kind of talent. It's really weird because these guys are really good, man. They're not bums. I mean,
that would be really strange if they were trying to sell the network, being as they just tried to buy into ESPN.
Yeah.
Like, that would be, I mean, we've seen weirder things, but that would be a real surprise if they were actively trying to shop their own network as they try and get their hands in everything.
Yeah. And to the other point we all kind of made, there's 3 people on this panel and we each mentioned a different person. Like, you're already hitting all the groups all the wrong way. It's like they're picking a demographic to make sure that somebody is mad about, there's only 4 cuts and all 3 of us, like, we all mentioned someone different. I mean, what are we doing with these cuts?
Yeah. Well, especially when it's not like their network is hurting, right? When ESPN did it, it's like, okay, well, that made sense because they were actively losing money.
Right.
So, okay, I get it. You gotta trim things where you can. The NFL's doing fine. It's not like they're hurting for cash. They are an extraordinarily profitable nonprofit.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I was really shocked to see NFL Network doing this, mostly because they didn't need to.
Right.
To your point, they were solving a problem they didn't have.
Yeah. It definitely was unexpected news when it came out. I was like, okay, I thought there'd be a buildup or something. Like when ESPN does it, we all just go, like you said, oh, okay. But this one was just like, yeah, I didn't even know there was something going on. It's almost like there's a scandal involving those 4 that we just didn't know about, like, I don't know.
Yeah,
an illegal smuggling operation, and they just discovered it and just decided they were deflating footballs all over the league. And
not you, Will, not you.
Man. Yeah.
I started watching this a long time ago, to be honest, because there was some other stuff that was just like, from a content standpoint, I was like, oh man, this is brutal. It was kind of brutal to watch, but they're probably not a part of this. They're cutting costs, and I don't even see why.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you're talking about people that routinely bring people to your network.
Well, I don't know if Palmer does that, but I mean, okay.
He was the one that nobody mentioned on
in the graphic, and I want to give respect to him because he's in the graphic. I mean, he's one of the fireys. I mean, okay, but
yeah, I mean,
so
I wouldn't
Siciliano for years before he even got here. I would listen to Siciliano. So I mean, I know him from and like Herb said, Stark. We know them from way before this happened. So
absolutely, yeah. No, I mean Palmer. He's one of those where you might tune in just because you're going to disagree with what he said. It's like watching, Perkins on a broadcast.
Ooh, no comparison. Wow. That man steams me up.
Yeah, like you're going to be mad every time he says stuff because you're like, you're talking nonsense. Like
I'm mad when he opens his mouth and says a word out of his mouth.
Yes.
Okay, what he says.
He does nonsense so often. I think, do you have a writer who's doing this for you, or are these your actual thoughts? Like, I'm honestly not sure at this point.
Actual dumb thoughts.
But the fact that man still has a job gives me hope that they're going to call me up one day and say,
right? Well, I mean, that's the thing is, I think it's just his shtick, right? Like kind of like Bayless, right? Like he's just there to make people mad.
Yeah.
There's no way you can believe all the nonsense. Like, there's no way he can believe all the nonsense that comes out of his face, right? Like, I mean, if he does, wow. But I mean,
that part is, I think he does. That's the part that scares me. I think he really believes it.
Which one, Skip or Perkins or both?
I mean, both, really. But
Perkins specifically, but yes. Yeah. I don't think Skip believes what he said. I think Skip knows he's stoking the fires and bringing those viewers in there and creating online hysteria. But Perkins, I think he really believes everything he says, especially on the NBA show. I'm like, you really believe that? I know you played, but stuff is it's nonsensical a lot of the time. But
no, that just shows you if you're a former player, there's always a job out there for you, because it's not like he's a well-polished guy out here saying ridiculous stuff. Half the times I can't even understand what's going on, and then it's terrible once I really get to it. So yeah, I mean, they have a game they play where they try to decipher what he said and what he was actually trying to say. I mean, that's how
a real game. That's a game.
I imagine that's a daily game.
Yes. I think Richard Jefferson ends up laughing at him like every show about it. So yeah, it's.
Well, I mean, so some of that I get because that's like when you're listening to Charles Barkley.
Right.
You're just like, man, you couldn't have worded that different.
But Charles probably couldn't have. So
that's fair.
Auburn education. That's what you're saying?
Well, you know, I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
It felt like that's where we were.
That is awesome.
Oh my God.
All right, we are at that midway point. We are going to do our station break. Be right back in a couple minutes.
This is Reggie Jones, owner and founder of Air Sports Academy. Air is based on the 4 core principles: heart, education, integrity, resiliency. Air is about developing student athletes physically and mentally through training, mentorship, and effective marketing. We've created a platform and a blueprint for our state to shine in the brightest of lights. I created this program because it was a need for our state. We needed to have the light shine on the student athletes in our region. And now that is happening at an all-time and undeniable rate. We created a lane for the kids in our state to get their college education paid for and set their families up for future success. We created an environment where serious athletes can now come compete fearlessly. We've achieved this through our variety of elite programs. Our 6-month off-season program, where first-year starters or seasoned vets can all come develop. Our 5-on-5 program, which is all about our line. Our youth tackle program, which is the first and only youth tackle team from the state of Washington to ever win a major national championship. Our 7-on-7 program, which is ranked top 10 in the country every year. Our high school 11-on-11 club tackle program, which creates unique and much needed opportunities for our kids. Our college prep program, which allows our graduates to come back from college and prepare for the upcoming season. Our track and field program, which creates an opportunity for our young air boys and air girls to continue to get faster. When you're a national program, you receive national respect, which is why when you look at recruiting boards and top player lists from around the country, you'll always find players from Air on those lists. Which is why college coaches from some of the most prestigious schools around the country come into our facility to recruit our players. The Penn State, Alabama, Oregon, Stanford, Florida State, the list goes on. Our players are being recruited, offered, and committing to some of the top schools in the nation. The experience our players and families receive is second to none. We offer a competitive brand of sports at Air. We are the ball. And with that comes great responsibility. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. As you said.
All right, and welcome back. So, speaking of basketball, easy segue here is Doc Rivers, right? So he is continuing to say dumb stuff because that is all that man does. And now he's blaming the travel staff, really blaming everybody except himself at this point. He went into a press conference saying that everybody seems happy except me. And I don't know how anybody can be happy based on the fact that it was a incredibly well-balanced team that was playing exceptionally well before he got there, right? They had like a 700 win percentage, right? So to what he has now, which I think he's 500, right? And he had to punch up to get to 500.
Yeah.
Do you think Doc Rivers makes it through this season or makes it into next season?
So his comments are the comments of a person who realizes his team could very well lose in the first round, and he's trying to already deflect some blame. The team, like this last, I think they've lost 5 out of the last 6, and 2 of them were to like 2 of the worst teams in the league. at a time when you're trying to fight to keep, because the positioning in the NBA is really, really important. Everybody wants to avoid the 4 seed. They want to avoid the Celtics. And all of a sudden you're losing 5 out of 6. Giannis gets hurt last night. It just, the team is not, like, to your point, they were playing at least record-wise better under Griffin. You knew what situation you were walking into. You knew, hey, it's more of an offensive than defensive team. You could fix the defense. Maybe you get some blah, blah. Anyway, you knew what you were walking into. So they're not playing well. That's on you. It's not like he was out there just looking for any job opening and took the first one available, and now he's just trying to work with it. No. Yeah. You saw this. You saw everything that they had. You saw what was going on. But some of the losses are just inexplicable. Like, you can't use to Memphis. Memphis has given up on the season. And I think they've lost them, like, before the All-Star break. And, like, it just – you got to come back to the coach, right? Because if they were going to play this way anyway, then what are you doing there? Why did they hire you? Why did you take this job? Especially when you end up losing handily 2 teams that you were expected to beat by double digits. Yes. And you get smacked by both of them. Yes. That's coaching. Yeah. And that comes down to effort on the court. Right. Yeah. I mean, if your players don't believe in the coaching, they don't believe in, the guys that are supposed to be leading. They're going to play terrible. And that has definitely been the case so far, which is why it's interesting that Doc Rivers can't do anything but blame. I mean, when you're blaming the travel staff, really, there's just no intensity there. It's like, well, yeah, but you're the coach. Like, you're supposed to build that, right? Like, it's a culture thing. And maybe the guy before you got fired because of personality issues and, a dip in defense, but you knew there was going to be a dip in defense. You spent all your money to have offense. You got your defensive players. Of course, the defense is going to get worse. Yep.
Yeah. But it looks like he backtracked a little bit and started holding a film session with his top guys to kind of, I guess, feel their concerns. And he made a couple of statements saying, it's his fault and not anybody else's. So he kind of backtracked a little bit. I don't know if that's going to be a job-saving move or not. Mm-hmm. But it's weird because historically now, if you go back and look at the coaches, and I guess I'm a geek about that. I can't help but go back and do that. So look at all of the coaching way back to Don Nelson and Dale Harris. These guys had stellar records, but the organization gave them time. The last time that they had, I never understood the whole Griffin firing to start with. Their defense was, I think it was top 3 the time that he was there. He was 30-13. It wasn't like he was under 5. He was 17 games over 500. And they bumped him, and nobody didn't dislike him. There was not any issue with any players that I can detect. They got rid of him, and it's like, okay. It sounded
like it was between him and ownership.
Yeah. He's he's winning games. That's what you want. And it's like, I don't understand that. Budenholzer, every time he turned around, they were talking about whether he's going to come back or not. He was 271 and 120. So it's like it seems like there's always impatience with this particular franchise. I don't know what it is. They had one guy that had a winning record. I think it was in 2018. I don't even know his name. His name is Prunty. He had a winning record. He was already gone in 1 year. It's like the days of George Karl are kind of over now. It's like, I don't know who's going to be able to hang out long term. They seem to be impatient. And I don't know if Doc Rivers can survive if you had that kind of mentality. Because, like I said, I feel like Budenholzer barely hung on. If it wasn't for the talent that he had and what they did, they had no less than a 630 record or 600 record for the entire time that he was there. So if it wasn't for the fact that he had that kind of talent, I would have gotten him quick too. So I don't see Doc Rivers having enough of a pedigree to avoid that. We got an impatient ownership that will can you, even if you're above 500. And he's, I think they're 48-31 now. So it's like, but it's not great. You got 2 guys that are injured that are important to your team. So I don't know what's going to happen. If you ask for my vote, I'm going to say you probably won't make it.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe at this point, that's what he's looking at is, you're looking at it as a coach to go, coach the Panthers. You're just like, all right, I'm going to have to do half a season. I'm going to get a fully guaranteed contract. I'm going to cash in. I'm not going to have to do a lot of work. Even if I blow the thing up, nobody's going to notice.
I think the thing about that might just keep him around is just the fact, like, you get rid of Doc, now you're paying 3 coaches, and then you have to hire a 4th. But
I mean, the Panthers are paying for 4, and they just hired a new one.
yeah, I don't. Well, if we're using the Panthers as our model, that's really gonna be bad for you if you're the Bucks. Like, don't model after them. But I mean, I don't feel bad for them because it's like this is what we said at the start. Was that Doc was going to be a bad hire, like he was going to improve. And the funny thing was he improved the defense for like the first week or two, but then like the offense cratered when he improved the defense. So all of a sudden they're like losing games like 90 to 85, and you're like, okay, we didn't need that extreme an example. Like, you're an offensively built team, And the only thing that I did see with Griffin, I know there was like once or twice where he clashed with Giannis. And then, like, I think even the Lopez brothers just on the defensive schemes they were playing. But it wasn't – you read more of those reports, like, after he got fired versus, like, in the middle of the season when it was going on. So it was kind of just – it was just – it was just like almost like, all right, now we fired him. Here's some back reasons why it happened versus, while it was going on.
They had to do that, man.
Yeah.
People weren't – everybody wasn't on board with this move like you might think. It wasn't like, oh, yeah, Doc Rivers coming in, or we going to win.
Yeah.
Well,
just like the LA Clippers.
Especially when you got a guy that's winning. It's not like they were bad, right?
Yeah.
They weren't bad, man. They were really good, man.
Well. Yeah,
they were really good.
And then, so it's a personality issue as far as the coach and the star. And Doc Rivers is your plan,
right?
It's not Blake's fault.
Yeah.
It's not Blake's fault. It's all Blake.
And like I told y'all, it's one of my favorite players is Damian Lillard. I put more of the onus on him, man. If you're going to sacrifice the defense for offense, I need 25 to 30 a night from you. Like, let's just being honest. If you're going to lose one of the best defensive players in the game trading out for you and you're not going to play any defense, like, you have to bring that. So all those nights when you're getting –
you at least got to get back on defense.
Yeah. Well,
show me some hustle.
I mean, that's a lot of energy getting back there, Bo. I mean, you can't.
I'm not saying play lockdown defense. I'm saying get in the way.
I
mean, you're asking a lot, Bo. You're asking a lot.
I knew when they didn't fight for Bobby Portis, I knew where they were going because I mean, he was a big reason why they won that championship. When you didn't fight for him, I'm like, I know where you guys heads are. All you thinking about is offense and not defense. They're going to end up paying for that.
What do you mean fight for Bobby? What do you mean fight for Bobby Portis?
I mean, I think he was a free agent, and they didn't, I guess, pony up to keep him on the team.
No, Bobby Portis is still on the team.
So who's the free agent they had that wasn't a championship run with them? Defensive, I think he was a 4. I'll look it up there.
Yeah, because Bobby Portis is still there. He's one of the.
It's not Bobby,
like because I think he took a below market deal really to stay with Milwaukee.
So who's the other guy? Who's the other guy then? If it's not Portis, who's the other guy then?
There's a free agent that left. I'm not sure you're talking about. Yeah, Drew Holiday was the big loss, and that was a trade. So and that's where they got Dame. But like I said, I put more of it on him, man. If you're gonna make a trade out like that, every night that you hit 15 to 20 points when it's only on like I'm hitting 1 for 7 on 3, like all those is unacceptable. And that was the big trade they made. Look, you're going to help carry the offense with Giannis. And Giannis has been putting up, MVP type numbers. He's like a top 3, top 5 candidate for it. It's to the rest of the team. This is how the team is built. You knew what you were walking into when they had this trade. Like, I need you to perform. So we can talk about coach, but I still think Doc Rivers is not the answer. But I put it on the players as well, man. You guys got to play better. So, and then the Chris Middleton injury is probably not helping. But I feel like they knew that kind of coming into the season as well when they ponied up a lot of money for him. Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he's always been healthy.
Right. So. I mean, he derailed their last run at the championship. Like, I guess before this last year too. So, but it was kind of like one of those, we don't know how to replace him, so we're going to pay for him and hope it works out. No, it's not working out. So.
Yep. All right, so to transition over into the NFL, Stephon Diggs gets traded. Not a huge shock to me, right? I think this actually works out great for both teams, right? Because Stephon Diggs is the way that his contract got changed, right? This is a 1-year deal. It's a contract year. So he's going to have a ton of incentive to play out of his mind. On the Bills side, they were practicing for life after Diggs since week 6. That was his last 100-yard game. So, I mean, they weren't really using him a ton anyway. So it looks like the Bills were finding ways to win without him. And so it made them moving on easy. And, you know, honestly, he does add an element that the Texans can use. And because it's a 1-year deal, you don't really have to worry about him souring and being a problem within the organization in a contract year.
Right. So I think this is kind of gearing up for the whole, like, we've got CJ Stroud on the cheap for a couple years. Let's go ahead and maximize and give him as many weapons as possible. And like you said, they didn't give up a whole lot to get Diggs. So if it sours quickly, like, hey, we still got Nico Collins and Tank Dell, we'll roll with that and probably be just fine. Was it Schultz at times? Like, we're probably going to be just fine with or without you. So you can come into a good situation, kind of reprove your worth to the league, or we'll move on without you and we'll be just fine. So,
well, yeah. And I mean, CJ already has chemistry with the other guys. So, you know, it's not like Diggs is going to come in and immediately be his number one option, right? He's got a year of chemistry building with the other guys on the roster. So, you know, there's the potential for him to be a problem from the beginning. But, you know, there's always that honeymoon period, and it's only going to be one season, because I really doubt that they sign him to a long-term deal. I actually kind of doubt anybody signs him to a long-term deal moving forward, right?
agreed.
Like, you watched how it ended, you know, with the Vikings. You watched how it ended with the Bills. If I'm a team that's looking at him, I'm looking at him very similar to the way I look at OBJ. I need a 1-year rental on a guy that can make some splash plays.
I saw Mr. Yu smiling, so I figured he had something on this one.
Yeah, right?
I'm listening to you guys talking. Sounds you guys know what you're talking about. you guys are spot on. I don't know what I can add to this. I'm kind of on the record that I feel like he's not. I'm not saying he's Antonio Brown, but
yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody's that, you know, quite
that
that's
level.
the pinnacle. That's why I say he's not.
Yeah.
but he does come to mind for some reason. But I mean, wherever he goes, I wonder if he's going to destroy the house by the time he leaves. So this bothers me because, you know, last year, you know, I saw something really great in the Texans, in Coach Ryans and what they're putting together. And honestly, I wasn't wearing red, white, and blue, but I was rooting for them boys. I wanted them to go as far as they can possibly go, if not at least to the deep into the playoffs. So I wanted that for him. So to see him go to this team, I'm like, oh my God, are you sure this is what you want? I mean, because sometimes people sacrifice talent, and they sacrifice a lot of stuff just to have talent on their team. And it's like, this guy, I mean, the Bills are better off when he was there. I mean, you can see that from the numbers. I mean, him and Allen probably one of the best QB wide receiver duos over the past 4 years when he was there. I give him credit for that. I mean, Diggs led the league in receptions and yards in his first season. He came in and made a splash. He made an impact. He did have 150 or more targets, which is like part of why he had a big impact. So if you don't throw me the ball as much, I won't have as much of an impact. I get that.
Right.
I mean, but in this case, it's like you come into a team that already, in my opinion, has something special going on.
Right.
Sure.
And I saw it from the beginning. Even we did our NFL Super preview show, whatever it was, before the season started. I said, you know what? The Texans are going to win the division, and they're going to be in the playoffs. I had a number for them. I forgot what number I called for them. And they pretty much did that. It was something special there. And now you add Diggs, it's like, it's going to help this. It's going to take away. It's going to become a distraction. It's going to create division on this team. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm concerned about it.
Like, I think they'll be okay, only because it's a 1 year, right? 1 year deal. I mean, they didn't give up anything to get him. The Bills are picking up the tab, right? They're the one eating the $31 million cap hit. So, I mean, they get him for nothing. It's a contract year. It's a new situation. Like every time we've seen him move, right? When he first got to the Vikings, when he first got to the Bills, absolutely lit it up. So with him having to go out and perform to get his next contract, I think they're going to be okay. Now, I wouldn't sign him long-term after this.
Right.
But as a 1-year rental, like if this was their plan to be like, okay, we're going to use our draft picks a little bit differently. We're going to add a little more defense, and we're going to have him in as a splash player, kind of like the Ravens did with OBJ. That could work. Or the Rams did with OBJ, right? Similar type of thing. So if they're using him in that way, I think it works because he's not going to be around long enough to poison the well.
Yeah. When the trade was first announced, everything that you said, Mista Yu, was what I thought too. And then they came out later like, yeah, we voided the rest of his contract. I said, oh, okay, this makes a little bit more sense.
Exactly.
Because that was my first thought. I was like, because I think we even talked about it maybe with a different player with the Texans, but I said like I wouldn't want like a malcontent wide receiver dropped into, a young team like that. I'd rather have them grow together. So when they said the Diggs, I was like, I saw what they gave up for him. I said, okay, that makes a little more sense. And then the void of the years, I said, okay, now you guys have a plan. You're like, look, man, you act up and we'll just be okay without you, we'll move you on. So I think it's more interesting from the Bills. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to move on, but just the Bills standpoint with having like an empty wide receiver room now. And like, I think what I read is that
Samuel.
I mean, I hope that works out. Hey, see, how come Mr. Yu gets all the cool stuff?
What is that?
I'm just holding it up and just like sitting here with it, and it's like,
right?
Yeah.
I just like that you get the cartoon thumbs, like, yeah,
Curtis Samuel, number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, like, what is that? What is that? I don't know what that is, but it is hilarious.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
your star gets the good stuff, man. The star gets the good stuff.
Right?
Stars, yeah.
Like I don't know how that comes up. But
nobody loves us, Bo. Nobody loves us.
Well, do you guys have Zoom? I already told you about this already. This is a Zoom thing. I don't know how it's in StreamYard, but it's a Zoom thing.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know.
I don't run it through Zoom, so that makes sense.
I'm not either. I'm just saying it's a Zoom thing.
Oh well, I mean,
but again, Curtis Samuel's the number 1 wide receiver. Curtis Samuel's the number 1 wide receiver, so you know that these guys are going into the draft. There's no way you can sit. Curtis Samuel. No offense to Mr. Samuel, but there's no way he's your number 1 going into the season.
No,
2024. So they're going heavy into the draft, but they're going to find a number 1 in the draft that's going to take over and be. The Bills are in a tough spot.
Yeah. And to your point, you're at a team that's like we always talk about is their championship window closing, right? Do you really want to draft the number 1 wide receiver and hope to bring him along? Like you basically need that guy on day 1 to be a superstar, right? And so if he falters at all, your team, I mean, you're pretty much done, right? And I think they're putting way too much stock in Josh Allen because I think you mentioned earlier he really took off when Diggs was there. So now we're thinking like, is he that same guy without a number 1 guy? Like I don't know any quarterback that loses all his wide receivers and gets better. Like
and no Gabe Davis either. Gabe Davis is going.
Because wasn't that like 44% of their targets or something like that, or 44% of their touchdowns was sure. Davis and Diggs. So
well, I mean, the thing is at some point if it becomes an issue where you're now having to force plays to that receiver, you do have to, right? Because all of a sudden that disrupts your play calling. It also makes it easier for the defense. You're like, okay, they haven't thrown it to Diggs in 3 downs. It's going to Diggs. It doesn't matter.
Right.
We could bracket him. It doesn't matter. He's getting the ball this time.
Right.
So, I mean, it does change how the defense looks at stuff if you are force feeding guys, and that's a problem because then they still get frustrated because they're like, oh, well, I didn't get my catches. It's like, well, yeah, because we're forcing it. Everybody knows we're forcing it. So now they're covering you differently because you're going to lose your mind on the sideline if I throw it to my tight end. So now I'm going to try and press the issue and get it to you. So, yeah, it's going to be harder for you to catch.
Yeah. Which also brings up the failing of them to never get a good number 2 wide receiver by him, because Gabe Davis was really not the answer. Like this could, you could trade away Diggs, maybe get a little bit more for him, maybe not, who knows. And you lost Davis, but your number 2 can maybe elevate to number 1. You added Curtis Samuel. Now you got a guy in the draft, and now your wide receiver room isn't so bad. But the fact that they didn't address this whole time, and then they lose their top 2 guys, like the long-term planning of it just looks terrible, And it's not like we just came out this last year and said, oh, they need number 2. Like, we've been saying that forever. I think since they've had Diggs, like, it'd be nice to have somebody next to him. So
it's gonna be brutal, man. And that cap situation is rough.
Yeah.
I think they got $10 million they're sitting on right now. It's like, I don't know who they're going to find on the street. I don't even know who's even out there in the free agent. We did that for several weeks.
Basically, only signs their draft picks.
Right.
That's all they got left.
I think as far as the championship window goes, if I'm sitting here right now without seeing something amazing happen between now and the start of the season, I think that window might be closed for real.
Yeah.
Teams like I say the Jets. I mean that in generally speaking, if all things work together. But the Dolphins, these teams might be taking over that East, and the Bills might be.
That's the thing that's funny about this division, though. Like, it's definitely narrowed, right? Their window is mostly closed. I wouldn't say it's completely closed because the Dolphins still don't have a defense. The Jets are, who knows?
Right. The Bills might not have an offense.
What about the Patriots? No.
What about them?
Not right now.
So that's kind of my point, right? Is the whole division kind of isn't where we thought they'd be. Like, the Dolphins got rid of the only guys on defense that were good.
Yeah.
And then, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the Bills offense. We're talking about the Dolphins offense versus the Bills defense. I'll take Miami in that situation. I think Rodg will too.
I feel like this is going to end up being a lot of Jets picks for the division this year, just because you're like, we don't know what's going on.
I can't do that yet.
Yeah, I feel like that's where it's headed, though.
It's the only team that has a defense.
Yeah. So if you can have Aaron Rodgers last more than 4 snaps, they got a shot because I think their biggest downfall last year was they didn't have a competent number 2. They were hoping Rodgers doesn't get hurt, but as a 40-year-old guy, injuries happen, right? Yeah. So the fact that they're like, oh yeah, this guy that we know doesn't work, we're going to keep him though, and he's going to be our number 2. So it's not like you, soon as Rodgers got hurt, you felt good about their chances, but now that you're going into this season, the Bills have they're worse on both sides of the ball. Yep.
The Dolphins don't have a defense to speak of. The Patriots are a dumpster fire. The Jets may actually be that best option in that division. And that is the weirdest thing to have come out of my mouth.
Yeah. I told you, you're going to get a lot of Jets. I didn't say it's a good thing.
No,
I just feel like you're going to get a lot of Jets picks.
It feels weird to say.
Yeah,
I can't co-sign on that one right now. Give me until after the draft at least. I'm not.
And I think that's an excellent point. The draft is going to be a little more interesting. Every time they make one of these moves, it gets a little bit more interesting. So, Buffalo, you're not going to trade up for it. You're not going to give up draft capital to move up for a good wide receiver, right? If you're the Bills.
Oh, definitely not.
So you're just sitting back there and hoping whoever falls is a good one, right? So
yeah, that division is going to be very interesting for the draft. Because of the need.
Leggett, man.
Say what?
He probably can't even get Leggett.
Yeah.
He's probably the 3rd best in the draft. And it's like, the 4th best in the draft. It's like, they probably won't even get him. So it's going to be after Leggett is drafted probably.
All right, gentlemen, we are at the top of the hour. Let everybody know how they can find you.
Good, Herb.
I get to go before the star? Thank you, man.
He's got to get those fireworks ready.
Yeah, Herb on Twitter, and you can search out Herb and Rodg Podcast on YouTube where you can see all of our stuff, man.
And we're at They Call Me Mista Yu on all of the socials. And of course, we're here on Wednesday wrap up and Mondays. They Call Me Mr. Yu. Yeah,
there it is. All right. Thanks for tuning in, whether you are on Roku, YouTube, Instagram Live, Spotify, doesn't matter. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our content to you. Other than that, we will see you next week. Or if you're on Roku, I will see you in a couple hours on Coast to Coast. Take it easy, everybody.
Yes.